fiction into fact.
Sometimes kind of real architectural life interferes with intellectual architectural life.
There is no such thing as architecture.
Hello everyone, this is Vikram Prakash and you are listening to Architecture Talk. Welcome to the new year, 2020, and today I'm starting off our season's next episode with a great conversation with my friend and colleague here at the Department of Dance, Jennifer Salk. Jennifer is a dancer and choreographer and chair of the dance program, and I've long thought that choreography, which is the act of moving the human body through space, must necessarily have something to do with architecture, because it certainly can be argued that what we do as architectural designers is also creating a stage set for the movement of the human body. With this premise, I had a fantastic conversation with her. We touched on a wide variety of topics, and I hope you enjoy it. Happy New Year. So, Jennifer, thank you for being on Architecture Talk. It's such a pleasure to have you here and to talk about dance and architecture. And we have worked earlier on one studio encounter, but I've seen you many times active here on various places on campus, but certainly in our architecture building over here in Gould Court, where you have used the beautiful space that we have with the stair going up in the middle between two levels and balconies all around, and you have choreographed specifically for that site, which is how I got very excited about talking to you, because I said, wow, here's a choreographer, dancer who is interested in the specifics of architecture. So why is that? Why are you interested in architecture as a site for composing dance?
I think it's because I've become less interested in performing and making work for the stage.
Uh-huh.
And I also think that it offers and pushes me into new territory in terms of my own lexicon, vocabulary, movement habits. Choreographers can often be discussed in a way where people will say, oh yes, I can tell that's a Mark Morris dance, or I can tell that's Twyla Tharp, and I think we all fall into habits when we're just creating for a blank space, but to actually make something because of the space, to be environmentally responsive, makes an entirely different kind of work.
So what is the correlation between making architecturally or environmentally responsive work and designing for a stage, which you I sensed you described as no space, as no place,
or a blank space, like a blank canvas. Whereas instead we are suddenly looking at the dimensions of a space. We are defining our work based on the space itself, and it's also providing obvious inspiration. The first thing that we do, and I also I have to credit my colleague Dee Chase Angier, because she and I work more often together than not on our work at this point. And we made that work called Hello at Gould Hall in 2012. And we spent 3 days what we call excavating the site, which is really just spending hours and hours in the site at multiple times of the day, with different kinds of populations moving in and out, watching the flow of traffic, looking at how the space was used, listening to sounds, smelling it, just shutting your eyes and just being aware of what's going on with your eyes closed. We map in our own way. Both of us work really differently, but we both mapped the entire space with our own way of drawing the space.
That's interesting. You sort of make a
blueprints,
excavation map.
Yeah, and then we count how many stairs are there, and how many windows are there, and how many floors are there, and we're trying to make details for ourselves, so that and taking photos, tons of photos, so we have drawings and photos, notes of our own. We do this all by ourselves without talking at all, and then we come back together and talk about what we've discovered to see if we can unearth from that what are the inspirations in this particular space, what excites us about those stairs, what excites us about and what we came away with Gould, for example, is the spatial dimensions perspective. I think what I'm talking about is perspective. Mm-hmm. How we can stand at different points of view in this building and get absolutely different and exciting ways to approach the space.
Right.
So somebody can be doing a solo down on the ground on that beautiful wood floor that you have below the stairs, and it looks really different standing around the performer down on that first floor than it does up on the top floor looking down at the solo, at the person's head, for example, to watch it.
But that's true in a theater also, right? I mean, from seats up close and seats up high on the second tier, third tier.
Yeah.
So what is more different about this?
One thing that is, you get a seat and that's what you get.
Right.
And you only get that view that you get because
you're not moving around.
Yeah, Meany Hall it's horrible for that. If you're off on the side, somebody could have entered the stage 5 minutes ago, but you don't see them.
Right.
So you're not having any experience other than there's something happening, but I can't see it.
Yeah.
Whereas the other thing that we're adding to this is exactly where we want people to look. So you have mainly 3 ways you can think about audience. One is we can move people through, which is what we did. We had leaders take the audience to different vantage points to make sure they saw exactly. We're kind of curating your perspective the whole time. We want you to be right here in this corner of the building to look down and see what's going on there. Whereas other times you've probably been to performances where you can just come and go whenever you want. You can watch it from wherever you want. You can move around while they're performing. Sometimes you're interacting. There's that as well. So those are the kinds of things we were determining. But going back to your initial question about the space and how it's working for us, we sometimes come up with a narrative idea. And for that space, what was so marvelous for us was the bathroom signs are these beautiful blue signs with white people.
Right.
And we loved the idea that these people don't ever get to meet in this building, and they are always staying away from each other, but they're always searching for each other.
Right.
So that was our anchor for utilizing all the parts of the spaces that we loved. Chase loved those tables in the cafe. She loved those tables, those transparent tables.
Yeah, they're beautiful, no?
I was in love with the classroom long windows for this one classroom. We both loved the stairwell, and I really wanted to work in the space under the stairwell with that wedge. So we just kind of went through and mapped the spaces that were most attractive, and then how do we want people to see things.
I see. So it's sort of the strangenesses and interesting opportunities that architecture sets up that you're exploiting.
I like that word, strangeness. I think that's it's intriguing,
versus the universality or sort of blank slateness of a stage.
And I also am thinking that restriction, one of the things we try to teach our students is restriction creates freedom. And it's just what you tell a teenager, of course, but they don't listen.
Yeah.
But all of the things that we have and that we looked at Gould, that wedge is my space.
Right.
And that's what I have to work with.
Right.
And that's where the innovation comes in my own work.
Right. Talk to me a little bit about, I'm very fascinated about what you're calling notation. I know from in dance, of course, the notation has a full language, how you notate music. I presume you have a way of notating dances. I mean, how do you record them on paper?
When I'm making things in my journals, I'm writing out ways that I'm making material. So I collaborate with the people involved, and I set up parameters and assignments for them. Or I might teach them some material, some movement material, and then have them manipulate it. But in terms of preserving or notating a dance, I'm not. I'm filming. Like I'm not.
You're filming. But
Yeah.
is there a language to notate dance? I mean,
Yeah,
how do we
Laban
know?
notation. Yeah, Laban notation. Rudolf Laban's form for
Laban.
notation is one of
Yeah.
many, and it's the one that I think I studied it for a long time. I thought I was going to get certified in it, but it's a long process, and then I got a job and was too busy.
I see. So
But-
video is just quicker and faster.
Well, but it leaves out a lot. Like there's a lot of nuance, like where are the eyes looking, or what's the weight that's involved in doing this movement. A movement with the arm can be done a million different ways. Are we getting the proper dynamic quality of that movement? So I think the perfect scenario for reconstructing or preserving dances is filming them from multiple sides, like from behind, from the sides, from all the dancers. You really want to do it, you might film isolated parts of the dance, like you would make a film, like scene 1, scene 2.
Right.
Notation is going to be really helpful. The notes from the choreographer. But one thing, there's no one thing that solves all the problems.
I see.
There's nothing perfect.
So, but how do you notate architecture in this way? Like,
Just rudimentary drawings and photos and we take, if you
basic
look,
plans, lots of photographs and notes.
when we went to France to the Chateau Coste site to create Murmur, we spent a week there. We spent 3 full days walking the property, and we each went and did our thing that I mentioned earlier, excavating the site.
Excavate.
But I look at my photo album, and I probably have 600 photos from those 3 days.
Too many, yeah. But
And it's like the rocks in the water, how deep is the water, how, we're also thinking about how are the dancers going to navigate this landscape?
Right.
Okay, can they be barefoot? No. So we're taking photos for all sorts of different reasons. The light at different times of day. What does it look like in the morning, in the evening? So we're trying to just gather as much as we can. So when we go away and try to create a movement score, we can have conversations and refer to these things.
it sounds to me, it feels a little bit like what I imagine producers and directors do when they're setting up a shot in a real site. Do you think it might be similar?
Yeah, my brother's in the film world, and I think the people who find the sites for filming are doing that for the directors and the producer. The people who are the production assistants and the set designer. Everybody is contributing to that, and the people who find those initial sites are doing that. If you're somebody who's hunting for sites, a scout, scout. You're doing all of that for the director,
right?
And being able to present the director these options. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit more about these strangenesses of architecture, because I'm very curious. I'm trying to understand, how somebody like you, who's thinking choreography, is reading architecture, right? I mean, what jumps at you, what doesn't jump at you? When we look at Gould, we look at this vast abstract open space with a sort of sculptural stair soaring through it, right? So can you talk to me about Gould and other sites and describe when you see an opportunity, what does it look like?
One thing that would be interesting to note would be that there are reasons that we're interested in sites, and then I can answer that question a little better. One is when we went to Chateau Lacoste, no one had ever activated those sites that were this beautiful water installation with the huge Calder mobile in it. The other were these 16 pillars that by Tadao Ando that hold up the building he built, but then they they gradually get shorter, and they are freestanding pillars as they go out to the vineyard at the end, and they get smaller and smaller. This perspective
you're
issue.
sort of playing with that.
No one had ever utilized them, so part of what we wanted to do was to excite people into seeing the spaces in ways they were ignoring them. Like I think people were just not noticing the beauty of them because that park is a winery, it's restaurants, but it's also got dozens of massive sculptures by some of the major sculptors in the world planted throughout the vineyard. So people aren't really looking at the building. Which is beautiful. It's an Ando building, you know. So when we were at Gould, our idea was, let's activate a place that's used all the time and make people see their space in a way they've never seen it before.
I see.
Which is really fun. You go up and down those stairs every day.
But you don't,
But you don't do this. So now maybe every time you come down to that landing, you're going to picture this guy named Dylan with the blue tape defining that platform, that landing, doing a solo there that excited that space for a moment. So I think that word strangeness, you made me think intrigue, like we find ourselves pulled towards a space, but then we ask some questions about, I'm sure if I went back to my notes, we dropped a lot of our ideas that were initially, oh, I love this space, I really want to use this space, but then we say, well, why? It's not working with the flow of what we're doing. So you, like anything, you dump,
you have to edit.
You're editing and dumping ideas. I think it goes back to the first thing I said in the interview about just not being, allowing a space to push me in new ways. And that's, I think, what is being offered. If I look at the wedge under the Gould Hall stairwell, there's that little triangular wedge of the cement stairs and a wood floor and that sharp angle, and it's dark under there, but there's a sense of openness to it. That's presenting to me all sorts of movement ideas in terms of vocabulary. Flipping things upside down, squishing people into this tiny space, seeing if they can use the space to make movement.
Would you say that the stairs in Gould Hall sort of dance down the space?
Oh, yeah. Dance up and down, but also from a distance, the zigzag of the way that they're
like
presented.
Two dancers
it's fantastic.
Choreographed, right.
We walked to every building all over campus, and that was the first building we looked at, and we said, now let's not get excited. And we looked at the new Packard building, the business building. I thought, oh man, Chase is going to love this. We went in, we were great, it was very exciting. But at the end of 2 days of looking, we came back to Gould. We were so in love with it. There's the
specific
rawness of the elements, the cement and the wood and the glass that we are attracted to, but also just the angles and the multiple perspectives we could give to the same thing.
So it seems like every case you talk about, strongly architectural spaces. I mean, this is a bit different from the street, I mean, just the regular urban street. I mean, I know some choreographers, like to think of choreography on the street, and it's a different attitude, right? What's the sort of distinction there?
That's such a good question. I don't know that I've ever thought that I wanted to do something on the street, although I've been involved in as a dancer, and I've seen so many fantastic dances on the street, running through the streets, on the sidewalks, on the cars, in the crosswalks. I think they're fantastic. I think I'm interested in, as a kid I used to draw blueprints,
You used to draw
I used
blueprints?
to draw blueprints as a 4-year-old and 5-year-old and
designing
6-year-old.
your own
I was
house?
designing houses, and then I would go through the blue chip catalogs and get the furniture, decide the furniture that was
Jennifer,
going in it.
you need to re-enroll in the School of Architecture.
I know, it cracks me up. I've always done blueprints. I do that for the space when I'm making stuff on stage
Blueprints,
too.
you mean plans?
My little plans, bird's eye views.
Yeah.
It's fascinating for me. So
Why? Is there do you have architecture in your background?
no, I think it's just I love making spaces like that. So the work that I make, even on stage, is spatially really I would say anyone making dance is spatially aware of what they're doing, but space is often, the way the spaces are defined on stage, as I've gotten more and more experienced, have become about defining space on stage too. It's not just like, here's a big group dance happening for the sake of it happening. The piece that I did in 2012 or 13 called Beats Me used about 200 rolls of blue tape over the course of, they went through dozens of rolls for every performance. And they laid down the spaces, and then they would have to pull it up and make new spaces all the time. So
while dancing.
While
part
dancing.
Of the choreography?
It was choreographed at one point.
And blue tapes denotes delimitation of space.
Yep.
Is that how you're using blue tape?
Yeah. So 8 dancers started in 6x6 squares of tape, where they had to do their solos that had been in rehearsal huge. They had to put them into these tiny spaces. So restricting, for us, a choreographic device that's very exciting is, if you were a dancer, I send you off to make, we work on a solo that uses the whole studio.
Okay.
And then I put down a 6x6 square and go, okay, now do that solo in that space and make it work. Edit whatever you need to do. So manipulating material that way is very exciting. So they started that way. And then they pick up their tape and they leave, and then there's a large square that they work within. At one point there's a runway on the diagonal where they're moving up and down the runway, and then there's a 4-square, like there's a game called 4-square, I don't know if you know it. We do a 4-square game in the piece. And then it's all about competition. There are musicians on stage who become referees at one point, and then there's runways at the end where they're all in these long runways, and every single time the stage changes, the lighting is exactly within the blue. So you're constantly seeing the definition with the lights and the blue tape. It's a long way to say I have an interest in manipulating space that way as well.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels like one could invert this and argue, simply for argument's sake, that architecture is simply a massive stage set for you.
Oh, yes. I completely agree. Yeah, I think it's the thing, as a teacher, I try to impart to my students, because producing dance is expensive. Being produced in a space is rare. There aren't enough theaters for everyone to perform. If you're waiting around to be produced, you'll never perform your work. And so look around you and find other ways to perform. And to me, there are spaces everywhere you look, including the street, to perform your work.
Sure. Yeah. So your background is in modern dance, right? I mean, what do you have a certain lineage you trace? Is it the Cunningham method, or the what school do you belong to?
I think I'm at that fantastic generation. I didn't start dancing until college, so I was about 16 when I started, and I started with African dance.
Oh.
Interestingly, they came through my high school. But we also had a good friend whose daughter danced in the Awa Nikolai company, Nikolai Dance Theater, which was in the 60s and 70s and 80s, one of the most famous modern dance companies in the world.
Okay.
And he was one of the first multimedia artists too. He made all of his own music on synthesizer and computer. He made all his own sets or had them designed. He did all of his own costumes and lighting in terms of designing and concept, and then all the choreography. And he often used as many as like 20 or 30 slide projectors for a show.
Wow.
So he was, and so when as a young person, maybe I was in 11 to 12, maybe I was 11 or 12 years old, we'd go to see the concerts when they'd come to Los Angeles, and you would be looking at the stage and you had no idea what you were looking at.
Really? What do
you couldn't see the dancers. It was incredible.
Oh,
it was like you saw a bubbling stage, like boiling
Right.
water or oil percolating, or you saw like blue. There was a lot of black light involved. Very playful, very childlike, very mysterious. A lot of illusion, and the dancers were the parts create the whole. So in that way, he was very architectural. So in other words, as a dancer, you often had a prop attached to you, like a square or something you're holding. And if you did not arrive at the right time with the other 10 people, the illusion is not there. Like the wall is not built. The trick is not going to happen.
But that doesn't sound like a very modernist ethos or aesthetic.
It's interesting. He drew a lot of attention from design and music, and a lot of the modern dance people, like Graham, who was an expressionist, and Cunningham. I think people like to say that, you know, they would sometimes make fun of his work, but his work was brilliant and unique and one of a kind. Okay. And you know, he was touring all over the world for years. I mean, in the biggest theaters in the world. Does he count as
sort of early postmodern?
Yeah,
or
yeah, I think
pop
so.
Or punk?
Because his work wasn't about anything emotional. I did a research paper in college that I was looking at Cunningham and Nicolai, and I thought they couldn't be more different, and they are so similar.
What do you mean?
Well, both of them have... They look at the body as this fantastic instrument. And one of the things Cunningham, you know, did as he got older and was not able to move as much, as he used life forms, which is a way to life forms is a way to choreograph and make movement on these bodies. They're not real. It's like, what do you call them? They're
like dancing.
Yeah, they're bodies, but they're
mannequins.
They're computer bodies.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Sorry,
digital
I'm not being
bodies.
very clear.
Digital bodies. Yes.
Digital bodies.
Yeah.
They're not real. They don't have faces.
Okay.
I haven't seen the current version, but he was one of the first people that they worked with when they were developing life forms.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the status is right now.
Yeah.
But what he started to do was say, well, he would get them to do these impossible things on the computer, and then he would show it to the dancers and say, learn that and do the closest thing you can to it.
Yeah.
So I think he was always trying to push the limits of what the body could do.
I see.
And, you know, I think he and Nicolai would say, well, you know, my work is dramatic because drama is that one thing follows the next. This happens, then this happens, then this happens. It is indeed dramatic. But I'm not trying to tell a story, and I'm not, you know, trying to tell you what to feel.
Right.
And both of them were presenting the body in new ways that had nothing to do with expressionist art and feeling, and they were really trying to push the boundaries of movement. And I think they were also thinking bigger about the way that dance can be presented in space. Going back to, you have Martha Graham and Doris Humphrey, and Jose Limon is out of Doris Humphrey. If you talk about my lineage, I came from the Limon. I had Limon, Cunningham, Nicolai, and Eric Hawkins were huge influences on me. I got to study with Limon with company members, because Limon had died by the time I was dancing. And then I got to study Cunningham with former company members. I worked with Nicolai directly. I was very lucky to do that. And I also got to take company class with Eric Hawkins and work with his company members. And that was tremendous influence on me. But then I plopped into the New York City dance scene in 1981, and that was the postmodern,
high days of postmodern.
And I'd gotten a taste of it at UCLA because the grad students were doing things like John Cage's work on stage. You know, what's it called? 4 minutes and
4 minutes 33 seconds or whatever the silent
and I was like, what is this? I'm 17 going, what is going on? You know, I wanted to dance at that time. And so every show I went to in New York was challenging me. And back in those days, the performing arts didn't have their own, and performance art did not have its own title. So they had to figure out with all the performance art that was going on, whether it fit into dance or theater. And I would go to some things and I was being exposed to some crazy ideas that just rocked my world. So if I had to identify with something, like many of us, I feel like I'm an eclectic mix of traditional dance forms and postmodern ideas. And the great thing about the 80s, and when I teach history, I love talking about this, is the 80s said yes to everything.
Right.
So we can't, back to virtuosity and being a dancer and being an amazing dancer, and yes to standing still and eating an apple on stage.
Okay.
And yes to pop and pop culture, and yes to beautiful classical music, and yes to collage, and yes to, it was sort of like there were no rules anymore. And I think I feel really fortunate that I was in that moment, because that's when I started to choreograph on my own.
So if the 80s were about saying yes to everything, what is the 2010s being about? What is the ethos of dance culture today? I guess here in the United States or Northwest, whatever you like.
I would say what we're seeing, which is quite beautiful, is I'm really sick of the word hybrid, but I'm trying to find a better word, that we're trying to see, we're seeing this eclectic technical ability in dancers. One of the things that started to happen in the 80s, but really it's the way I work when I make dance, and many people work this way, is we collaborate with dancers to make material. So I don't get up and necessarily just teach movement to them and expect them to just give it back to me.
Right.
I'll give you an assignment to go away and do something, solve a problem, come back, and then we shape it together so that it's yours too. So often you'll see on programs now in collaboration with the dancers.
Right.
Directed by Jennifer Salk. Collaboration with blah, blah, blah. Because there's a fine line, the dancers are making up material too, because we're interested, people I know today, we're interested in you as an individual, and you don't have to look like me the way I'm moving.
Right.
Not everyone works like that.
Right.
But I think contemporary artists are working that way.
Right.
I also think that so many people are training in multiple forms now, that modern and ballet are being decentralized, and people are not just training in contemporary ballet or contemporary modern or modern. They're training in street and club dance styles and African dance and capoeira, and they have these multiple ways to move, because I think that the choreographers are asking for, a lot of the choreographers have come from these multiple dance forms, so you kind of have to have in your body a lot of things to offer. And I think it makes for a much more exciting movement vocabulary.
It's much more global.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
it is. And again, it's never everything, but that's what I'm excited about. That's what I'm seeing, and I also think there's a really great movement for making work that is socially, people have always made political and social work.
Right.
But I think there's a new resurgence in the past 4 years in particular. That is an outcry.
We will let that pass.
Yes. We are seeing a lot of really relevant and meaningful and powerful statements happening with people's work, more than I remember. But I remember in the 80s there was a lot, of course, in the 60s and 70s. But I think that I'm seeing a large group of people focusing on making work that is politically really exciting. Yes. I also think there are a lot more people of color are finally being recognized for the work that they're making, and I'm hoping, and I think that I'm observing, they're receiving more recognition, more grant money, more support for the work that they're doing.
Okay. Is dance thriving? Is it, I constantly hear about how, attendance at museums is drastically down. Opera and symphony seem to be struggling, unless you're the Met Opera or whatever. What about dance? It seems to me like, at least looking at the Seattle, there's a lot of dance.
There's a lot of dance, and there are a lot of people going to see dance.
Right.
When I first moved here in 2002, I had come from Tampa, Florida, and no one ever went to see anything. So it was,
that right?
They'd only go to see the big companies. But even when Mark Morris came to Tampa once, the house was half full, and it was sort of like, where is everybody? And that, there's no energy put into that. And so I came here and I wouldn't buy tickets. I'd just show up at the door and they'd be sold out.
Right.
Everything was sold out all the time.
Right.
And I thought, wow, you better get it together and start reserving tickets for things, or you're never going to see anything. And I wasn't used to that.
Right.
I think there's a lot of people who want to go see dance. I think there's a lot of experimental work going on here, and I also think, like any community, everything can start to look the same because all the dancers are the same dancers working with, and if we are working the way I told you, which is I want you to bring your strengths to my work, but then you're also working with that choreographer and that choreographer and that choreographer, you stand the risk of all of the work looking the same because the dancers are helping make the material.
Right. Why is the dance community very narrow, or is it? Why are the same dancers everywhere?
There's a limited amount of dancers. I mean, I think there are a lot of dancers who would say, I can't get a job, but there's, I think that there are just a lot of opportunities for people to perform. One of the things I'm appreciating, this is kind of a sidebar, but one of the things I'm appreciating is that dancers are now finally standing up and saying, I can't work for you unless you at least give me $10 an hour. And that's nothing, right?
Yeah, that's
But
nothing.
Normally, often people expect people to work for free and get some little stipend at the end.
Is
or
that
nothing.
right?
Yeah. And that's got to stop. It's
Yeah,
perpetuating a problem that's been going on for decades.
Yeah.
And it needs to stop.
Right.
And so I really respect the fact that dancers are saying, I can't do this. You're at least paying my transportation,
Yeah.
Because the choreographers often have nothing.
Yeah.
Or nothing, they're working with very little. So, and in the old days, often they'll work with collaborators, and the filmmaker will get money, but the dancers aren't, and that makes no sense.
Yeah.
They're the main reason that you're able to do the work.
Right. Are there other people working in town like you with the site-specific or architectural work?
Yeah, I mean, on and off, yes. I know Aaliyah Swirsky is brilliant at it. There's a lot of stuff that happens downtown annually they do. I think that Peter Bowles, I think P&B spearheaded this, but I could be wrong. But they do a sculpture park site work thing where companies and individual artists are invited to do work down there during this series. And they have I've read that they have over 1,000 people come to those.
Oh.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it.
Wow.
So it's very successful. I'm gone usually in the summer, so I'm never here for it. But I've had some of our former students have done it, and I think this is a thriving dance community. I think as always, there are never enough theaters. There's never enough money to produce all the work that needs to be seen.
Right.
Which is, again, why we circle back to using other spaces so you can make your work.
Right.
There's never enough grant money. People are always fighting over the same pot of money.
Right.
But that is not different than it was to me. I think it's a never-ending cycle of never being enough money for people.
I also saw a performance here, I think at Meany, where there was a company which was dancing on sides of buildings.
Oh, that was Bandaloop.
Bandaloop,
yeah,
that's right.
One of our faculty members, Rachel Lincoln.
Really?
She's been with the company for 18 years or 20 years. She's the associate artistic director, I think.
Yeah.
She, because of that connection and because of Meany, Michelle Witt's love of that work, we were able to do a Mellon Foundation Creative Artist Fellowship with Bandaloop. And so they were able to do some of their repertory that they have done before outside, and then they did their new work in the theater, which they rarely work in a theater, so that was kind of the interesting thing.
I saw that.
Yeah.
And that was fantastic.
Yeah, they're fantastic.
It's so amazing to use buildings also in a strange way, but in a different definition of strange.
Just beautiful. I'm glad you saw that. I thought it was great fun.
It's sort of an alternate reading of gravity.
Yes.
I show that to my students in studio
great.
all the time.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah. As we move towards the end over here, I'm going to put you on the spot and ask, so if you had to design a collaborative studio with architecture, with an architectural studio, what would you imagine?
Do you mean a course, a class, or you mean design a building?
No, a course.
Like
architects in a studio designing a building or whatever. Architects, we have studios. We have students, working on something. 3 days a week of crits and so on, and you're running choreography studios, I presume, or something like that.
Yeah.
If you had to imagine a collaborative studio, what would you imagine?
Oh, that's a great question. That's not so much on the spot. It's exciting. I would imagine similar to something that we did with digital art and experimental media one time, which was magical, and in a choreography class where we collaborate, and the architects have some taste of making dance and being involved with movement.
So you would teach the architects some dance,
and then the movers would learn some design elements and ways of making architectural structures, so that there's some exchange of learning, and then working together on projects. Whether it's an architecture student and a dancer, or 2 architecture students and 2 dancers collaborating on a project, or there could be multiple ways to do that.
What would a project look like, for instance?
Yeah, it could be. I think it needs to be. There could be prototypes of a design of a space, like a fantasy space.
Yeah.
And then some elements of maybe going into the studio as movers to create movement as if it's in that space. And I'm saying that because right now I'm working with a person who we're going to film on green screen and put things into architectural spaces he's made virtually.
I see.
Based on inspirations from architectural spaces that he's seeing in Philadelphia. So he's going around and taking photos, and then he's putting mishmashes of inspiration together to make virtual spaces for the dance to exist in. So if I took that idea into what you're asking, I would say we could create some prototype of a space, and then the dancers would have to figure out how to map it out and make it for that space. So there may be a model, and the dancers have to look at the model and figure out how they could negotiate it. I don't know.
That sounds fascinating.
The only part that makes me feel sad about that process, though, is that they don't actually get to make in the space that we've made. So what's the other element of that that idea of that studio would be that the architecture students and the dancers go to a space, pick a space on campus, go through their own version of whatever it is to really study those spaces architecturally, from the architectural lens, as well as from the dancer lens, and then make something together in the space.
So we get the architects to do some choreography.
Yeah.
And get the dancers to think architecture.
Yeah.
I think that would be so much fun. We have to do that one day.
I think so too. And 2 big projects. One would be out in the environment together, and another would be the prototype idea of something. I think it would be fantastic. And then all sorts of other little things that could be prepping them for that. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Thank you for the conversation.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for asking.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening to Architecture Talk. This is Vikram Prakash, your host, and our producer is the one and only Sammy Prouty, a graduate student of architecture here at the University of Washington in Seattle. I hope you all enjoyed our conversation, and if you did, please do take a moment to subscribe and to rate us on iTunes. See you next time. Take care. Goodbye.